This is just a list of numbers that I made up and typed into Excel. But let's pretend that these are the exam scores of 20 students who are taking a class together. We're going to change each person's exam score into a z-score. Before we can do that, we have to find out what the mean and standard deviation of the class equals. We can find the mean of the class by clicking on an empty cell down here and typing in equals and then the word average and then putting a left parentheses right here and then highlighting all of the numbers in the column and then closing the parentheses and then pressing enter. So right now it says equals average and then A2 colon A21 in parentheses. What this is saying is that it's going to calculate the average of all numbers from A2 to A21, which is this entire column. So now I'll press enter, and it gives me the mean exam score of the class, which comes out to 77.85. Now I want to get the standard deviation of the class. So I'll click on another empty cell down here, and I'll type in equals STDEV, and then I have to actually type in .p, since it's an entire population. When I type in equals STDEV.p, it calculates this. It tells Excel that I'm calculating the standard deviation of an entire population. So Excel won't use n-1. They'll just use the formula with n. Remember that there's two formulas for a standard deviation, one for a sample and one for a population. Now I type in the left parentheses and I highlight all of the exam scores. I'm not highlighting this number because this wasn't one of the exam scores. This is the mean that we calculated. Now I close the parentheses and I press enter, and it gives me the standard deviation of the class. So down here I have the mean exam score of the class and the standard deviation of the class. Now I can find each student's z-score. I can find each student's z-score by subtracting each exam score by the mean and then dividing by the standard deviation. So I need to highlight this cell right here, and then in this cell I type in equals. In Excel you always have to start with an equal sign when you're calculating something. Then I enter a left parentheses. I highlight this first exam score of 25. I type in a subtraction sign, and then I click on the mean down here, which we calculated together. Then I type in a right parentheses, and then I type in this slash right here. It's a division sign. And then I click on the standard deviation down here. And once I press enter, Excel is going to subtract 25 by the mean and then divide the answer by the standard deviation. And that'll give us the z-score of person 1 right here. So I press enter. So person 1, who had an exam score of 25, had a z-score of negative 3.33, roughly. So this student's exam score is pretty far below the mean of 77. That's why the z-score is such a big negative number. If I hover the mouse right here at the bottom right, and then I click, I can drag this down, and it'll do the same calculations for every number, or it should. I think what I actually have to do is right here. I have to type in a $sign and a $sign right here, and then also for the standard deviation I have to type in these $signs, because in Excel if I use these $signs it knows to subtract by this number every time, and then divide by this number every time. So I'm going to press enter, and then now if I drag down, it should do the same calculations for every value. So for each of these exam scores, it subtracted it by the mean and divided it by the standard deviation. So these are the exam scores of the 20 students, and these are the z-scores of the 20 students. Each student has both an exam score and a z-score. And we can see right here that the standard deviation is 15.82, which means that in this class, a student with an exam score that's 15.82 below the mean would have a z-score of -1, and a student with an exam score that's 15.82 above the mean would have a z-score of +1. Because remember I said that a person who's one standard deviation below the mean has a z-score of -1, and a person who's one standard deviation above the mean has a z-score of +1. Now we don't see any one with a 1 or a -1 in here, but we do see some other z-scores with decimals.